Welcome to The Derby Difference, the podcast where we share the stories of students and alumni whose journeys began right here at Derby Academy. Today, I'm excited to welcome Henry Stevens, a member of Derby class of 2025, who is now thriving at Brooks School in Andover, Massachusetts. During his time at Derby, Henry was a familiar face on stage and on the ice. He starred in multiple school productions, playing the Beast in Beauty and the Beast and King Triton in The Little Mermaid. He was also a member of the hockey and baseball teams and served as a Derby student ambassador. Now at Brooks, Henry has stepped into new leadership roles as a tour guide, helping prospective students find their way just like he once did. Today, we'll talk about how Derby prepared him for high school and what the transition has been like. Henry, welcome to the Derby Difference.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
What are some of your favorite memories from your time at Derby Academy?
Well, there's a lot. I definitely say all the friends I made and these close-knit communities I made, especially in some of my sports teams. I remember my 8th grade baseball team and hockey team. Everyone was just super supportive, and it was a really, really great community to be in.
You were involved in a lot of sports, as you just mentioned. You're also involved in theater. You're also an admission ambassador here. How did you balance all of those opportunities that Derby gave you?
Well, I really liked doing all of it, so that was definitely a main reason. But I also think Derby was super supportive, faculty and students, with everything. And I just think it's a great environment that really fosters that ability to multitask on all these different things and succeed at all of them.
Amazing. So being a student ambassador is sort of a tour guide. You talk to prospective families. What did being a student ambassador teach you about leadership and community?
Well, if you're a kid at Derby the first people you see, especially if you're coming on some of those days when you have a student tour guide, is that student that's giving you the tour. And I really think being a really friendly face for those kids and prospective families and really giving them the student experience instead of the faculty experience really means a lot to them. And I think that really helped promote me talking to adults, talking to other students, and just being a better community member.
Wonderful. And switching over to theater, because that was another big thing that you were involved with at Derby, you played the Beast and you played King Triton in Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid, two very big roles, prominent roles, starring lead roles. What did you love about performing in those productions? What was exciting about those two roles and those two productions?
Well, I remember 5th grade, I was a pretty shy kid, right? And I didn't really like being in front of a lot of people, speaking, public speaking, stuff like that. And I remember in 6th grade, when we were auditioning for the musical and me getting Frederick, which you didn't mention, but it's the lead role. I remember that really gave me a lot of self-confidence. And
what play was that?
Pirates of Penzance.
Oh, got it. Awesome.
6th grade. Yeah, it's not very well known, but that role really brought me into that theater community. And that community was a really big part of my success at Derby. That confidence that being in that community gave me.
How did being on stage help you grow in confidence in public speaking?
Well, obviously you're singing in front of the entire school and all your friends. So it's kind of trial by fire there. But yeah, like I said, everyone is just so supportive. Like if you messed up, everyone would just be like, you got this next time. And that was super important.
So you were singing. Did you have a big singing role in the Pirates of Penzance? I think that was maybe before my time because I don't remember that exactly.
Yeah, I was on the top of a wood pillar screaming, I love you to 8 girls in the bottom of the theater. So that was a big trial by fire moment.
Yeah, that tracks. Yep, I like
yep.
that. Awesome. You also played athletics here, and I think that's like the wonderful thing about Derby is you're able to balance a number of different things like you mentioned. You played both hockey and baseball at Derby. What lessons did you learn from being part of those teams?
Well, it's a really good one, especially in 8th grade. Not being like the best on a team, but being an 8th grade leader and having that leadership responsibility, it really teaches you like, okay, you're not the best, but you're going to be that support guy. You're going to be the one helping the younger kids with their confidence. You're going to be the person helping out whenever you can. And I think that was a really big part of 8th grade athletics.
Yeah. And that's what I loved about you as an 8th grader on my baseball team is we had another 7th grade catcher and you two split time. And when he was in the game, you were his biggest cheerleader. And I really appreciated that fact that, you weren't sitting on the bench, sulking or talking to the other kids that were on the bench. You were cheering on the team. You were really invested in how well he was doing, how well the team was doing. So I really appreciated that as a coach. And you continued to play sports at Brooks. We were just talking a little bit before we started about squash. You've turned a new leaf and you've tried squash. What did you do in the fall?
In the fall, I did theater tech, which was a good, big thing. And this spring, I'm doing crew. So that'll be really fun. I really am, like you're saying, turning new leaves, just trying some new stuff. Everyone here is supportive about it, even if you're a complete newbie. So.
And had you ever played squash before? Had you ever tried crew before?
No, it has been truly my first times ever playing. And squash is such a fun sport. I played a lot of tennis, but I mean, it's different. You're inside, balls bouncing against a lot of more walls. It's fun.
Very nice. And so how did you get turned on to playing squash? Why was that a sport that you picked up?
So my faculty advisor here, his name was Mr. Gorton. He's coaching it. So I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to do in the winter. I'm not going to make the hockey team because we have a really good hockey team. So he was like, yeah, try squash with me. I'm a newbie too. So I tried third squash and I'm loving it.
Amazing. Tell the listeners a little bit about sort of the setup of teams at independent schools, because obviously not everybody makes varsity. So what happens when you don't make the varsity team?
So a couple things can happen. If you're trying out for varsity and you don't make it, you're pretty guaranteed to be in the JV level. However, very popular sports like basketball, soccer, lacrosse, not lacrosse at Brooks, but most places with lacrosse, they will have a thirds level below that. And that is really for players that are either new to the sport or still developing their skills. You don't compete as much, but you still are in a very supportive environment where you're learning how to play, how to be a good player, how to be a good sportsmanship, how to gain good sportsmanship, and just learning on those basic fundamental skills.
Very nice. I love that. So it's sort of like a learning program rather than like a competitive program.
Yeah.
Very cool. Talk to me about your transition to Brooks, because obviously you were a day student here at Derby, and now I'm assuming that I'm talking to you in your dorm room.
Yes.
What was the biggest adjustment moving from Derby to Brooks?
Well, I mean, like you just said, I'm living here. As much as I'd love to live at Derby, but living at your school, it comes with a lot of independence, and you really need to gain that. It's like I always tell the 8th graders at Derby now, if I really wanted to, I could just stay in my bed all day. I get in trouble for it, but it's very different because you are in charge of yourself. You decide if you want to get out of bed in the morning and go to class. And that's a big thing. And I think that quality of independence is something Derby really fostered, especially from some of my friends that weren't as fortunate to come from a place like Derby where you're learning all those independent traits. I just really think back how lucky I was to be able to be at a place where it's teaching you to be so independent.
So were the first couple weeks at Brooks, were they challenging in terms of transition, or did you feel like you sort of blended right into the community immediately?
For me, I think it was pretty seamless. I definitely learning, like making friends again is definitely different after you're at a place for 4 years. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but everyone here is so supportive and everyone's so nice that I really didn't have that hard of a time transitioning.
Amazing. What ways did Derby prepare you for high school academically?
I always say this, note-taking was a really big one. Shout out to Miss Malone, math, 8th grade. She was very supportive of me and really made me take good notes, which I think is a very underrated thing here. And especially in classes like science, history, English, you can't just get an A by being kind to the teacher. You know what I mean? You have to do the work. You have to learn how to study on your own. You have to learn how to get a good grade. And I think that note-taking aspect was a really big deal, especially for me.
Were you prepared academically once you got to Brooks?
I believe I was. Yeah, I'm in honors physics, so that's pretty cool. I love science, and Mr. Kleberg, Mr. Harris, Mr. Robin, they were always super supportive of me in science, and I think they really gave me a love for that.
That's great. What surprised you most about Brooks when you arrived there at first?
Ooh, I'd say how like much you actually see your teachers. I remember after my first day, I came back to the dorm and like we have to check in at 8 o'clock for study hall. And it's just the teacher that I just had for science is one of our dorm parents. So like I just saw him. And I think that's kind of a big difference because you're really living with them and you really can't hide from your assignments. And I think that's a big one. Like if you are having an outstanding assignment, you're going to see that teacher around. And that is something that I think gives you a good work ethic to get stuff done. But yeah, I'd say seeing your teachers that often.
Yeah. The added pressure of always seeing your teacher
Yeah.
kind of makes you get stuff done, right? I remember when I was
Yes.
working at Milton Academy, there'd be students that would forget about tours and just
Ooh.
wouldn't show up to the admission office,
Ooh.
right?
Yeah.
But the worst part was I would see that student
Yep.
like 11 times before they got to bed.
Yep.
And,
Exactly.
and so there's like that extra pressure to get stuff done because, the guilt is baked in there.
Yeah, there's no hiding from it.
No hiding at
No
all.
hiding.
So speaking of tour guides, you are a tour guide at Brooks. What
Yes,
made
I
you
am.
decide to be a tour guide there? Why did you want to take on that role?
Well, in the beginning, I actually didn't. I kind of was like, okay, it's freshman year. I'm just going to take it slow, try to get some good grades. But then one of the 8th graders at Derby wanted to come up, who's like a family friend. He wanted to come up and take a tour. So my mom like texts me on a Sunday, hey, could blah, blah, blah come up and take a tour with you? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't have nothing better to do. So I took him to breakfast, walked him around campus. And then when he comes back for his real tour at Brooks, he tells Miss Reese, the head admissions officer here, about my tour that I gave her. And she like texts me and she's like, why aren't you giving tours for us? So one thing led to another. And now, yeah, I'm doing like 5 tours a week in the height of it.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so 5 tours a week. Does that take away from study hall time or free period time? What does that take away from?
It takes away from free period time. However, most of the time during the day, my frees are in a really weird place where they're usually right after I have like a lunch block or something. So I don't really find myself needing that for anything to have homework or anything like that. And I just love meeting new families, new kids. So I'm happy to do it.
What do you enjoy most about showing new students around your school?
Oh, there's a lot. I love seeing their faces when they like walk into our science center and seeing all the classrooms, the labs, and all the projects that the kids are working on and being like, whoa, I could be doing that. Especially with the athletes too. I love showing them into our athletic center because I think we have a pretty good one. We're pretty fortunate to have a pretty good one. And I just love seeing their faces light up and just them seeing, like I was when I was touring here, like imagining what they would look like in this place.
So needless to say, you're happy you chose Brooks and you're happy you're there?
Yes, I'm very happy I chose Brooks.
Very good. Switching gears just slightly back to Derby, because this is the Derby difference, not the Brooks difference. What do you miss most about Derby Academy?
Ooh, I'd say those relationships with teachers. I mean, I see you guys not a lot. I'm back every once in a while, but yeah, definitely the relationships with teachers and definitely friends because I'm still in contact with most of them, but it's different to seeing them every single day.
Right. What advice would you give current Derby 8th graders preparing for high school? So I'm thinking about potentially teaching a class next either spring or during the winter about transition to high school. So if you were a guest speaker in my class, what are 1 or 2 or 3 topics that you'd really want to touch upon?
I'd say just because you're going to high school, don't leave the friends that you've made in 8th grade, especially from Derby. I think those are a great support system to have, especially when you're in high school, first couple of weeks. I'd say don't be so uptight about like what your first public image is. Yeah, first impressions are important, but as people get to know you, they'll get to know the real you. And I think don't be so worried about what you look like to other people. And then last thing, I think freshman year is a big one. Get the work done. I think I know it sounds bad, but if you can do the work and you can pull your own, freshman year is going to be a breeze. And I really think that was something that I've kind of figured out through my first semester here. So yeah, those 3 things would be my biggest piece of advice.
How has the workload transition been? Like, obviously at Derby, it's a rigorous place. Do you feel like Brooks is a lot harder, a little harder, about the same as Derby? Tell me about that.
I mean, I think it's quantity over or quality over quantity. I think we have a little bit more challenging assignments. However, most nights I find myself working on 2 assignments. One probably is a long-term paper for history or some science homework that is due at the end of the week when we have our quiz. So I definitely think Derby is very similar workload. I find myself probably doing 2 to 3 subjects a night that's due the next day. But it really depends, especially here, and I think at Derby as well, what teachers you have. If you have a teacher that maybe will give you a lot more homework, it'll probably be less, but it'll be in more quantity. Or if you have, like my history teacher, he gives us probably 1 assignment and it's for 2 weeks and we just work on that at our own pace. But it's a big assignment. It's like a paper researching. So I think it's pretty similar, maybe a little bit more, but very similar.
Got it. And this is our last question. We're almost out of time. In your own words, what is the Derby difference?
Ooh, what is the Derby difference? As an avid podcast listener and a Derby difference listener, I'm very happy I get to be asked this question. I think the Derby difference is really showcasing how Derby Academy prepares you and how it differs from a lot of other places, because it is a super special place. There's so many opportunities that you can get at Derby and that prepare you for like life. And I think the Derby difference really showcases that to everyone from the words of students, other faculty. And I think that's a super important quality to have.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Henry. I'm glad that after being a longtime listener, you were able to join the pod. Was it everything you expected it to be and more?
It was. Yes, it was great.
Awesome. So this wraps up episode of The Derby Difference. A big thank you to Henry Stevens for sharing his journey from Derby Academy to Brooks and for reminding us how the experiences students have here continue to shape them long after graduation. From the stage to the athletic fields to serving as an ambassador, Henry made the most of his time at Derby, and it's wonderful to see him now helping others find their place at Brooks. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe for more stories from students and alumni who carry the Derby difference with them whenever they go. Until next time, thanks for listening.